Amazing discovery. Millionaire uncovers single mother in his country house and makes a transformative connection. Mark Thompson stood in the shadow of his grandmother's country house, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. The place was a ghost of its former glory, covered in dust, silence, and memories long gone. A millionaire by all societal standards, Mark had pursued wealth relentlessly. Yet here he was, lonely, staring at peeling paint and sagging eaves, grappling with the whispers of his inadequacies. This house, once filled with laughter, now echoed only his solitude, a stark reminder of everything he lacked. As he began to rummage through the neglected rooms, his heart raced, not with excitement but trepidation. What hope could lie within these walls? Stacks of forgotten boxes crammed with family relics beckoned him, but they also threatened to unearth buried feelings he'd rather keep hidden. When he finally discovered the attic, it was like uncovering a tomb. Dust motes danced in the air, each one a fragment of a life left behind. But the moment he spotted a letter, yellowed and fragile, his breath caught in his throat. The letter spoke of Leah, a single mother entwined in his grandfather's past, and of her daughter Sophie, struggling to survive under the weight of responsibilities far too heavy for her young shoulders. Mark's chest tightened as he read Leah's words, the longing and despair pouring from the page. He felt an invisible thread pulling at him, a curiosity stirred by their plight that ignited a yearning buried deep within. Before the weight of obligation could settle, he found himself driving through the quaint, rugged town in search of Leah. His heart raced as he parked outside the modest diner where she worked multiple jobs. Mark hesitated, guilt washing over him. Could his wealth really bolster a life so deeply entrenched in struggle? Or would he simply be forcing his riches upon her, a mirror to the control he had fled from in his own family? Mark watched Leah from a distance, taking in her determination as she juggled tasks, a fierce love that glimmered with every movement. It was all so simple yet painfully complex. He yearned to offer help, to ease her burden, but a clashing wave of doubt came crashing down. Wasn't he just trying to alleviate his guilt? Would his wealth merely entrap them in dependency? The questions swirled in his mind, tightening like a noose. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The balance of their worlds seemed tenuous. His wealth against her independence, his desire for connection threatening to swallow her whole. Mark took a deep breath, tension knotting in his stomach. Could their lives intertwine without breaking her spirit? The way she brushed off his first offer made him flinch. What had he expected? This was not a fairy tale. As gentle laughter occasionally dripped into his consciousness from their conversations, he felt the gleam of hope, but it was edged with fear, just as he began to see the possibility of companionship, another revelation loomed beyond the horizon, an echo of the past that threatened to pull him back into loneliness. Mark stood on the precipice, heart racing, sweat beading on his brow. Choice and consequence weighed heavily, each an impenetrable barrier to the future he could barely envision. Could he dare to step beyond the glossy facade of affluence and into the fragility of a family bound by hardship? The answer felt just out of reach, but he knew. This decision could change everything. Mark took a step back, leaning against the exterior of his car as he watched Leah interact with a few regulars. It was in those moments of laughter and camaraderie that he saw the essence of her spirit, the way she found joy amidst the chaos. Yet, doubt gnawed at him. Could he truly be a part of her world without imposing his ideals and wealth? He had made piles of money by identifying problems and crafting innovative solutions. But this situation felt intangible, like trying to grasp mist. The financial gain, the thrill of business victories, all paled when juxtaposed against the authentic human connection he sought. He needed to confront the tension within him, to pursue a course not dictated by ego, but by genuine connection and understanding. Gathering courage, Mark slid from his car and made his way to the diner. Each step felt heavy, an anchor of uncertainty weighing down his intentions. Leah glanced his way, surprise flickering in her eyes when their gazes met. "Mark," she acknowledged, wiping her hands on her apron as she approached. "Hi, Leah. I wanted to check in and see how you're doing," he began, the words tumbling out as he fought to maintain composure. "I'm fine," she replied, her eyes narrowing slightly. "The job isn't easy, but I manage." The subtle defensiveness in her voice sparked determination within him. It ignited a sense of responsibility that he hadn't anticipated. He could either offer assistance or disappear under the weight of his privilege. Mark stepped closer, drawn into her orbit. "You mentioned struggles last time we talked," he attempted carefully, searching her face for openness. "And I thought maybe we could find some solutions together." A flicker of vulnerability crossed her expression, quickly replaced by resolve. "I don't want charity, Mark. I appreciate your concern, but I need to do this on my own." Her refusal slapped him back quicker than he expected. Observing her, Mark realized that her independence was more than mere pride. It was survival instinct woven into her identity. His initial impulse to offer help felt shallow compared to her depth of character. What struck him was the fragility of his own experience. His world operated in concrete transactions, clear hierarchies, and defined achievements. Leah, however, navigated uncertainties with an unwavering tenacity that both fascinated and intimidated him. Mark had built his success on one side of the spectrum. She lived fully on the other. "Could I at least come by," he proposed, "to help brainstorm some ideas for your situation?" As the words flowed from him, he internalized the intent. He sought not to save her but to stand alongside her, learning in the process. Could he genuinely contribute without overshadowing her strength? Leah hesitated, her expression softening as she considered his offer. "You really want to help?" "Yes," Mark affirmed, his voice firm and resolute. "But I want to do it as a partner, not a patron." The heavy silence that followed was thick with calculation. Her gaze pierced him as if assessing his soul. Mark understood that the battle to forge a connection ran deeper than any financial transaction. Slowly, Leah nodded. "All right, but we'll do it my way." The weight in his chest began to lift. A partnership was grounding, an invitation into the unknown for both of them. It was a tentative step toward something new, an avenue for personal growth he never anticipated. But as they exchanged ideas, something darker loomed in the background, a realization that their woven destinies might give rise to unforeseen challenges. Just as Mark began to contemplate this new chapter of his life, an unexpected figure emerged from the corner of his vision, and with that, the past threatened to collide with his present in a way he had yet to prepare for. As Mark's eyes focused on the figure approaching, the familiar visage pulled him back into memories he had buried. It was Garrett, his former business partner, the embodiment of the corporate world Mark had distanced himself from. Each step Garrett took felt like a drumbeat of impending confrontation, the type that pushed old animosities to the forefront. "Mark, it's been a while," Garrett called, thrusting out his hand. The disparity between their worlds struck Mark, his freshly discovered vulnerability juxtaposed against Garrett's trained confidence. He felt the warmth of Leah's imminent partnership flicker behind him, a stark contrast to the dissonance Garrett represented. Mark hesitated, memories of their tumultuous split and Garrett's cutthroat methods flooding back. "Garrett," Mark replied, forcing the familiarity while acknowledging the gulf that had opened between them. Contact with his past felt like an automatic response, conflicting with how he yearned to move forward. Garrett's eyes flicked past Mark to the diner. "Nice place you've gotten yourself into. Still mingling with the locals, I see." There was a thinly veiled sneer beneath the compliment. The irritation boiled within Mark, but he held it in check. This could become a critical moment, one in which he could easily slip back into the hierarchical confrontations of his previous life. Instead, he chose to keep his voice steady. "I'm here to help the community, Garrett. It's different now." "Helping the community?" Garrett laughed, the sound jarring. Since when did you care about anything other than the bottom line? What's your end game? Will you put together some charity event? Each jab renewed the tension in Mark's chest. He had navigated this atmosphere before, where emotions twisted into professional maneuvers. As he stood there, Mark began questioning the very essence of his new partnership with Leah. Was he truly prepared to confront his old life without slipping back into its manipulations? You wouldn't understand, Mark responded, determined. Leah's fighting for something real. Garrett's expression shifted from amusement to mock concern. A single mother struggling to make ends meet? His tone oscillated between condescension and sincerity. You can't save her, Mark. You never were the savior type, were you? With a defiant breath, Mark pushed deeper into his resolve. This isn't about saving anyone, it's mutual. We're working together. Sounds altruistic, Garrett said, his skepticism heavy in the air. Be careful. That kind of sentimentality can cloud your judgment. Mark felt a rush of both indignation and fear. The conversation felt circular, recircling the familiar doubts about whether he truly belonged in this new chapter, or whether it was just a veneer under which his true self would emerge. The ambitious, ruthless businessman who thrived in competition. Suddenly a thought struck him, a defining realization. The person he was becoming was not merely a reaction against his past, it was a conscious choice. Instead of pushing Garrett away, what if he faced him head-on? Could Mark confront this embodiment of his previous self and stand firm in a new identity shaped by Leah and the journey they were embarking on together? As he internally grappled with this potential turning point, he felt Leah approach, her presence a steadying force amidst the rising tide of internal conflict. Perhaps she sensed the shift, an invitation into a more profound conversation about his emerging self. But as Garrett leaned in closer, throwing out a challenge of his own, Mark knew the stakes had risen. This would not just be a battle for his ideals, but a confrontation that could redefine how he viewed his path and the potential of what had just begun with Leah. Are you ready for the reality check, Mark? Garrett taunted, sensing an opportunity. Because I know how to play this game. Mark felt the pulsating tension in the air tighten, the line between his past and future blurring into a single unpredictable moment. The time had come to face not only Garrett, but the shadows of doubt clinging to his newly forged ambitions. The air thickened around Mark, the weight of Garrett's words clinging to him like a heavy fog. He could see the mockery dancing in Garrett's eyes, a baiting lure, testing the waters of his resolve. This was more than just a conversation. It was a challenge, a confrontation that threatened to crack open the facade he had fought so hard to establish. The question gnawed at him. Was he strong enough to emerge from the shadow of his past? Leah, quietly observing, felt the shift in Mark's demeanor. She stepped closer, not to intervene but to offer silent support, a reminder of the partnership they were beginning to forge. The warmth of her presence reaffirmed his conviction, but the lingering doubts gnawed at the edges of his confidence, twisting and turning like a latent serpent threatening to strike. Listen, Garrett, Mark began, his voice steadier than he felt. This isn't a game to me. I'm not here to play into your old tricks. I'm trying to build something, make a difference. He locked eyes with his former partner, determined to stand his ground. Make a difference? Garrett's laugh cut through the tension like a knife. You think sitting around this diner sipping coffee with locals will change anything? You're deluding yourself. The derision in Garrett's tone hit like a physical blow, unearthing insecurities Mark thought he'd buried deep. Old habits beckoned him to retaliate, to match Garrett's cynicism with sharp wit. Instead, he felt something shift inside him. He was no longer that man who needed to outsmart everyone around him. I understand this isn't how you do things, Mark replied. But maybe that's the point. Maybe it's time to try a different approach. Garrett's eyebrows shot up, surprise flickering across his face, replaced quickly by skepticism. A different approach? Are you really going to change the way the world works, Mark? People don't change, he said, leaning in slightly, his voice lowering conspiratorially. They hide behind their pretenses until they're forced to show who they really are. And underneath it all, you're just like me. A surge of anger ignited within Mark, But instead of allowing it to spiral into a defensive retort, he took a deep breath, redirecting that energy into clarity. No, I'm not. I'm not a ruthless businessman anymore. I won't become the monster you're still trying to be. He felt an unexpected rush of confidence, the grounding strength of his resolve surging forth like a shield. This was not just about Garrett's insinuations. It was about proving to himself that he could remain unscathed while standing up for what he believed in. Good luck with that, Garrett replied, brushing off Mark's words with a flick of his wrist. But remember, Mark, the world rewards those who go after what they want, not the ones who sit around with noble intentions. With each exchange, a flicker of doubt tried to worm its way back into Mark's mind. But instead of succumbing, he concentrated on the image of Leah, her purposeful drive igniting an intuition he never knew he possessed. Leah is brave, he stated, fierce determination coloring his voice. She's done things for herself and her child that a self-serving corporate tycoon like you would never understand. I'm not looking for reward, Garrett. I'm looking for fulfillment. That's a value you'll never grasp. Garrett momentarily recoiled, a flash of something unreadable flickering in his eyes, maybe even respect or annoyance. You think you can do this without slipping back into your old ways? Good luck with that, Mark. Old habits die hard. You'll see. As Garrett turned to leave, Mark felt a wave wash over him, a blend of fear and empowerment. Garrett's opinion had always held weight. It felt more real now with the stakes raised. What if Garrett was right? But a seed of doubt was met with defiance. I won't go back, Mark whispered to himself, feeling Leah's supportive presence beside him. I'll prove that I've changed. The moment felt pivotal, charged with new promises and the thrill of a real transformation. As Garrett's back disappeared into the street, Mark turned to Leah, ready to share the thoughts swirling in his mind. Let's get back to work, Mark said, a newfound clarity crystallizing his intentions. He locked his gaze with Leah, every fiber of his being igniting at the prospect of their future. But as they walked back toward the diner, Mark fought against a rising sense of foreboding. This wasn't just about him challenging his past anymore. It was about navigating a path forward that would either solidify his growth or bring him right back to where he'd started. Could he maintain his newfound principles against the growing pressures around him? The real test was yet to come. Mark entered the diner with Leah, but the warmth of the shared goal felt distant. A lingering doubt clouded every hopeful thought. He wasn't just battling Garrett. He was wrestling with the intricate web of his past choices, decisions that had come fully formed and demanding to be acknowledged. His heart raced as he headed toward the counter, yet the rhythm of his resolve felt unsteady, a metronome swinging wildly between confidence and insecurity. What do you think he meant by that? Leah asked, her brow slightly furrowed as they took their seats. The question hung heavily in the air, a probe into the core of Mark's internal struggle. People don't change, he repeated, the words bitter on his tongue. It's not what I want to be true. He stared at the meticulously arranged condiments on the counter, lost in the tension of transformation. He had prophesied his rise from the ashes of his past. How could he let a single reply unravel all that he had fought for? We don't have to see it that way, Mark. Change is hard, but it's possible, Leah urged, a spark of optimism illuminating her voice. Yet doubt loomed large over Mark's thoughts. What if changing meant facing a part of himself he had spent years trying to shed? He nodded, acknowledging Leah's support, but his mind drifted. The image of Garrett's disdain floated before him, mocking his ideals with every sneer and comment. Mark reached for the coffee cup, the hot liquid burning his fingertips. It was a reminder that his path was fraught with discomfort. Maybe Garrett was right about one thing. Old habits did die hard. Let's work on our outreach proposal, Leah suggested, breaking through his reverie. This will allow us to reach those families who could really use our help. Mark took another sip, the bold flavor a refreshing jolt. Actually, I have some ideas, he said, the initial hesitation melting away as a surge of enthusiasm took over. What if we focus on the local schools? There's a huge gap in resources for the children. If we can partner with them, we can do something tangible, create real change. Leah's eyes brightened, reflecting his excitement. That's brilliant, she exclaimed. A solid plan can help us build trust in the community. For the first time in hours, Mark felt a flicker of hope, a fragile yet persistent flame. He scribbled down notes rapidly, ideas spinning out of him like vibrant colors on a blank canvas. The dread he had felt moments ago began to recede, nourished by his growing conviction. This was his chance to redefine himself. Not as a businessman seeking profit, but as a man aiming for authenticity and purpose. Suddenly the bell above the diner door chimed, and Mark's heart sank as Garrett strode in. The air thickened once again with unwelcome familiarity. Mark's immediate instinct was to shrink away, to hide behind the newfound shield of hope he had just wrapped around his shoulders. But instead he straightened, a resolute anger rising as he realized that confronting Garrett wasn't just about surviving the encounter. It was about thriving despite it. Here for your daily dose of mocking, Garrett? Or do you want to join us in something constructive? Mark called out, his voice steady, echoing with the strength he didn't know he possessed. Garrett approached with an expression that flickered between amusement and irritation. Constructive? He echoed mockingly. You really think you can make a difference here? You're just postponing the inevitable, Mark. Mark's pulse quickened as he prepared for the volley of defense against the wounds of Garrett's cynicism. In that moment, he realized something profound. He wasn't fighting for validation anymore. He was standing for what mattered. I've come to learn that standing still is the only real failure, Mark replied, defiance climbing into his voice. So if you're here to antagonize me, then you've picked the wrong person. The silence in the diner thickened with anticipation, every gaze drawn to the unlikely standoff. Garrett's expression shifted, his earlier bravado momentarily bleeding away. So what's next? Garrett challenged, a peculiar gleam in his eye. How are you going to avoid falling back into old habits? I'll find a way. That's what this journey is about, Mark declared, feeling invulnerable in the support of Leah, whose steady hand rested on his arm. As Garrett shrugged off the tension, shadows shifted within the diner, and Mark knew that a battle lay ahead. A test not just against Garrett but against every whisper of doubt that threatened to strangle his newfound goals. But the pressure only solidified his resolve. He would venture forward into this confrontation. The narratives he weaved would define him. What could he discover about himself by letting go of the past, and how far was he willing to go to protect this new path he had chosen? With the stakes higher than ever, Mark faced the uncertain horizon, ready to unearth what lay ahead. Mark sat back down with a fierce determination pulsing through him, feeling the weight of the diner's atmosphere shift. Garrett lingered for a moment, gauging his response before turning away with a scoff. Still, the echo of their confrontation hung over Mark, compelling him to assess not just his words but the very reasons he had clung to his convictions in the first place. Leah leaned closer, sensing the storm within him. You held your ground, she said softly, almost reverently. That's not easy. You should be proud. Proud? The word felt foreign. What did pride matter if the seeds of doubt still burrowed deep in the soil of his mind? He could hear Garrett's voice echoing through the cacophony of his thoughts, taunting him with the belief that change was an illusion. I don't know if proud is the right word, he admitted. It felt more like survival. Am I just delaying the inevitable? Leah shook her head, her momentum undeterred. No, Mark, you're actively choosing your path. There's power in that. But what if this is just a fleeting moment? A burst of energy that fades when reality sets in? Mark's voice grew ragged. The nagging fear that he was still bound to his past weighed heavily on him. Then you address it. You keep fighting, just like you did today, she countered, her conviction sharpened by the earlier tension. Do you really want to give up on what you've started? The question pierced through the haze of uncertainty. The adrenaline from facing Garrett began to transform into clarity. This wasn't just about Garrett. It was about Mark redefining not just who he was, but who he could be. That's a slippery slope, though, he replied, wrestling with the thought. What if I stumble? What if I can't keep moving forward? Then you recover, and you learn, Leah encouraged, leaning back but keeping her eyes glued to his, firm and unwavering. That's part of growth. It's not about never faltering. It's about how we rise after each fall. Mark felt a shift within him. The conflicting emotions began to weave together into a single thread of determination. He recalled the children he wanted to help. Those were not just names on a page. They were the embodiment of the change he sought. An idea struck him, a vision sparked by Leah's words. "What if we incorporate workshops for parents too?" he proposed suddenly, a rush of excitement filling his voice. Helping them engage with their kids around educational resources. It could empower the entire family, not just the children. Leah's face lit up. "That's genius. We could offer sessions on financial literacy, nutrition, even emotional well-being. It creates a holistic approach." "Exactly," Mark concurred, the thrill of innovation stoking his adrenaline. The proposal was more than a plan. It felt like a tangible lifeline thrown into chaotic waters. It was a way to forge connections, to bridge the gap he had always felt between aspirations and reality. Just as the walls of uncertainty began to crack, Mark caught sight of a pair of familiar eyes. Garrett had returned, slipping into a booth at the far end of the diner. The sight rekindled that simmering tension. But instead of retreating again, Mark took a breath. "Leah, do you think he'll ever see what we're trying to do?" he asked, a flicker of anxiety surfacing beneath the confident exterior he struggled to maintain. "Let Garrett worry about himself," Leah replied matter-of-factly. "You're not trying to prove anything to him. What matters is that you know your intention is good." Mark nodded again, a surge of resolve washing over him. This would not simply be an act of defiance against Garrett, but a catalyst for real change. With newfound clarity, he refocused his attention on the proposal. Ideas flowed freely now, each branching out and building on the last, as if a dam had broken within him. Mark saw the prospect of leading this initiative as a way to carve out a space where he could shine, not despite his past, but with it as fuel for his future. Yet as he conceptualized his vision, a lingering shadow whispering doubt remained. He looked back to Garrett, who was watching them now, a smirk playing at the edge of his lips like he had an inside scoop on some untold truth. Mark's chest tightened. It was clear that this conflict was far from over. Could he truly keep this momentum going? Or was it a battle not just against Garrett, but one that would plague him for much longer? Mark could feel the tide shifting within him, yet knew the question remained unanswered. The greater fight lay ahead, not just with Garrett, but against the specters of his own past complacency, a reckoning that awaited him at every turn. As he engaged deeper with Leah's ideas, the line between fear and resolve became increasingly blurred, hinting that the real confrontation was imminent. What would it ultimately take for him to emerge truly transformed, unshackled from every lingering doubt? Mark's determination was a palpable force as he pushed himself up from the booth, the greasy shine of the diner's table reflecting more than just the artificial light above. It mirrored his resolve, a scrappy gleam flickering to life in the murky atmosphere. He had an idea to develop and he needed to act on it. "Let's get started on the proposal today," he declared, feeling Leah's steady gaze bolster his confidence. It was time to take action, to turn thoughts into tangible movements. Mark pulled out his notebook and began jotting down notes. Each scribble felt like a charge of energy, vibrating with purpose. "Workshops for parents, engagement strategies, it's all about community education," he murmured to himself, feeling the momentum build as he articulated each idea. There was no room anymore for insistence on past failures. Every word he wrote was a building block towards what he envisioned. The restaurant's dull hum faded away, his mind moving rapidly between ideals and possibilities. Leah leaned over his shoulder, excitedly pointing out connections he had missed. "You're looking at it too narrowly. What about partnerships with local businesses? They could sponsor sessions or provide resources." "Yes," Mark exclaimed, his pulse quickening at the thought. Local sponsorship could enhance credibility, and maybe even free workshops in schools to get the ball rolling. Suddenly, bubble wraps of fear threatened to seal the intense enthusiasm. Was he reaching too far? What if he fell short? This internal battle flickered in his mind, but Leah's unwavering belief served as a guidepost, helping him cling to action. "Each small step is progress," he reminded himself. "Even if I stumble, it's about getting back up." The realization gripped him, and soon, his doubt became a launching pad for further action. With a newfound focus, Mark decided to schedule a meeting with his former colleagues from the educational sector that had once felt so distant from him. He would not let fear dictate the narrative. Instead, he'd rewrite his story with tangible outreach and proactive involvement. Leah's engagement and feedback provided a much-needed sounding board. They collaborated fiercely, brainstorming ways to attract interest from the community. A simple flyer or social media post could garner attention. Mark's excitement bubbled up each time they tackled another potential roadblock, converting it into a new opportunity. At the apex of their collaborative fervor, Mark created a flowchart, each section detailing the progression from discussions to workshops, feeding into a feeding frenzy of hopeful ideas. The interaction with Leah ignited something deeper. He felt empowered as they identified the importance of resilience and adaptability. But as the day wore on, a creeping discomfort mingled with his victories. Over the clatter of plates, his eyes snapped back to Garrett, whose smug demeanor hadn't shifted. The man was a constant reminder of the doubts that left Mark feeling unsteady. "Why does he keep watching us?" Mark said, desperation creeping into his voice. It felt intrusive, almost threatening. Leah's response was sharply confident. "Don't let him into your head. You've come too far. Focus on what's ahead, not on what's behind you." Her words infused fresh conviction in Mark. He had his vision now, a purpose that resonated far beyond the judgment of one man. What Garrett thought didn't matter. But then a new question struck him. Could he sustain the excitement and drive after the initial rush? Would the impending darkness of self-doubt distance him from this newfound purpose? No, he refused to allow that. He would confront and outpace his fears and failures. As they wrapped up the ideas and plotted tangible next steps, Mark could feel the gap between potential and action closing quickly. His transformed mindset gleamed with possibilities, and he was ready to face the next challenge. But just as he pitched a future meeting with Leah to solidify plans, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. The words rendered him momentarily speechless. "I know what you're planning. Don't think you can pull this off without consequences." Mark's heart raced as the weight of uncertainty crushed in around him again. What consequences awaited him? Would he have to confront not just Garrett, but this new, unseen foe? In one moment he had leaped towards his goal. The next, uncertainty gripped him once more, revealing the layered complexity of his journey ahead. The stakes were rising, and so was the pressure. Mark sat in the booth, his pulse still racing from the cryptic message. The fluorescent lights above seemed harsh, illuminating the fresh thoughts racing through his mind while casting long shadows of doubt. He stared blankly at the flowchart he had drawn, the vibrant ink now appearing ominous under the flickering light. Was he being watched? And by whom, if not Garrett, the ever-present specter of his past self? "Mark?" Leah's voice cut through the haze. "Hey, are you okay?" He blinked, momentarily caught in a whirlwind of confusion. "Yeah, I'm fine, just thinking about this message." He glanced around the diner, the bustle providing a sharp contrast to the turmoil inside him. "Is it from him?" Leah leaned forward, concern etched across her brow. "It's from an unknown number," he replied, the unease returning. "What if they really do know what I'm planning? What if this is more than just a distraction?" "Then you need to be more prepared," Leah stated firmly. Her fierceness ignited a flicker of resolve within him. "You've taken a giant leap forward, Mark. Don't let this shake you off course. It can't be a coincidence that as you're making progress, someone is trying to derail you." Her response was a clarion call to action. Slowly he allowed her words to ignite his determination anew. Mark realized this was not just a hurdle. It was an opportunity to strengthen his resolve. He wouldn't cower before an unknown threat. The journey ahead demanded not only his intellect and creativity but also his fortitude. "Let's get back to it," he said, a newfound intensity penetrating his voice. "I need to strengthen our proposal. I want it to be so unassailable that they can't touch it." With Leah at his side, they dived into the details, molding the proposal into something vibrant and compelling. The fear of potential consequences began to recede, replaced by a hunger to push forward. They brainstormed potential partnerships, turning his earlier ideas into actionable strategies. As they worked, Mark found himself considering not just the logistics, but also how he'd respond to opposition. Each potential obstacle became a new facet of his growing resolve. Days turned into nights filled with late meetings and strategy sessions. Mark started connecting with communities he had previously distanced himself from, reaching out to former colleagues, and even other local organizations with aligned interests. The initial call hesitated on the line of doubt, but the more outreach he made, the more determination replaced it. He felt an electric pull towards opportunities he had only once dreamed of. However, with every meaningful conversation came unanswered questions about that lurking unknown. Whispers of uncertainty followed Mark like an unseen shadow. Who was the message from? The fear of an apparent ulterior motive weighed him down, yet it also acted as fuel. On a particularly frenetic afternoon while drafting emails at his desk, Mark received an unexpected phone call. His heart raced with anticipation, but when he saw the caller ID, the adrenaline dropped. It was Garrett. His voice oozed with insincerity. "Mark, interesting moves you're making. Hope you have what it takes this time." "Why do you care?" Mark shot back, suppressing the urge to show how rattled he felt. Garrett merely chuckled, the sound dripping with condescension. "Let's just say I hope you know what happens when someone stirs the pot in our little circle." Mark clenched his jaw, each word stretching taut like a rubber band ready to snap. He felt cornered, yet within that enclosure lingered a spark of audacious courage. "I'm not afraid of your games anymore, Garrett. I'm going to make this work. Consequences be damned." As the call ended, Mark found a strange serenity in his defiance. The storm was brewing, and Mark was not about to buckle. But soon after he hung up, another message pinged on his phone, this time a photo revealing a hidden ally, gazing out from the shadows. The caption read, "Be careful who you trust." What lay ahead? In that swirling uncertainty, the pressure grew, but so did his resolve. It was time to prepare for a confrontation with layers of confrontation he had yet to uncover. Mark spent the following days consumed by his work, but even more so by the cryptic messages whispering doubts into his mind. As though trying to break free from a being he thought he had cast aside, Garrett's looming presence remained unsettlingly palpable, dragging him into a mental fray. The photo sent moments after their conversation lingered, casting doubt on every alleged ally in his network. Determined to dismantle the ever-present threat, he doubled down on forging connections, taking Leah's message to heart. He quickly secured meetings with influential local entrepreneurs and held brainstorming sessions with advocacy groups. In order to start strong, he needed substance, a cohesive vision that would resonate and captivate potential stakeholders. One afternoon, Mark drove to an expansive park nestled on the outskirts of the city, intent on meeting with a nonprofit director who had previously shown interest in partnering with him. The lush landscape, dotted with vibrant autumn hues, felt inviting. Yet Mark couldn't shake the tense atmosphere that hovered around him. The drive offered time for reflection, and he considered the progress he had made. For too long, he had tiptoed around the edges of his ambitions, wary of his past mistakes. Now he would not falter in the face of adversity. At the park pavilion he met Fiona, a fervent advocate for community development. They discussed everything from logistics to shared missions, and for the first time in recent weeks, Mark felt invigorated by collaboration. During their conversation, Fiona presented him with an unexpected suggestion. A collaborative project that could benefit both their causes, something ambitious and far-reaching. "What if we launched a shared initiative?" she proposed, eyes sparkling with the potential of the idea. "Imagine pairing your innovations with our reach. Together, we could bring transformative change to the area." Mark's heart raced as ideas melded in his mind. This wasn't just an escape from Garrett's shadow. It was an opportunity to solidify his purpose. He had fought too hard to let his past dictate the narrative. "I love it. Let's craft a proposal that's not only comprehensive, but also presents a united front. They spent hours outlining strategies, weighing risks, and finding solutions. Mark fed off Fiona's energy, and by the end of the meeting, he felt lighter, as though an unseen weight had been lifted. That same evening, while reviewing their plans, he thought over what had shifted within him. The fear that once paralyzed him morphed into an unwavering ambition. However, back at his apartment late that night, unresolved feelings bubbled to the surface. As he scrolled through the many contacts on his phone, he hesitated over who to trust, questioning if he was truly prepared for the valleys that might lie ahead. This new venture sparked a flicker of hope, but it also entrenched him deeper into an entangled web of possibility and peril. Would he be able to defend his newfound position against those who wished to have him falter? The doubts echoed alongside another ping from his phone. Another message, this time a simple line. Time to finalize your choices. Suddenly, Mark felt a jolt of desperation. The duality of his resolve threatened to break under external pressure. He was on the brink of defining his future, yet the past loomed like a specter waiting to strike. He needed clarity, a clear understanding of who would truly stand by him and who would fall into the shadows. The game was escalating. It was time to lay everything bare. He had to confront not just his antagonists, but also the tangled web of alliances and intentions swirling around him. With a deep breath, Mark powered down his laptop, determination coursing through him. The moment had come to face those hidden in the shadows and make irrevocable choices that would shape his destiny. But when he opened his door to head out, a figure stood waiting in the dim light of the hallway, one he knew could change everything. "Mark," the figure called, their voice both familiar and unsettling. "We need to talk." Mark's heart pounded as he recognized Leah's silhouette, framed by the flickering lights of the hallway. The tension that had woven itself into his recent weeks crackled in the air. Was this another challenge to confront, or an opportunity to deepen his collaboration? "Leah?" he asked, attempting to mask his apprehension with a veneer of calm. "What's going on?" As she stepped into the light, her expression flickered between urgency and determination. "I've been hearing things, Mark, about you and your plans. I just want to make sure you're not getting in over your head." The words struck a chord. Every bit of self-doubt, every fear of slipping back into familiar patterns surged forward. "I can't afford to let that happen," he replied, the weight of his ambitions feeling heavier than ever. "I'm trying to build a future, something meaningful that can help others." "I believe in that," Leah affirmed, her gaze penetrating. "But you can't turn a blind eye to the pressures around you, especially with Garrett lurking. You need to tether yourself to those who truly have your back. You can't shoulder this alone." Mark took a breath, processing her words, feeling a mixture of gratitude and frustration. "I know, but I can't let fear hold me back. I've come too far." "But what if that fear is a signal?" Leah challenged gently. "What if it's your intuition telling you to be cautious?" He hesitated, the truth of her words cutting deeper than he anticipated. "You might be right, but I have to move forward." "Then let's do it together," she urged, stepping closer. "We're already a team. I don't want to just stand by and watch you dive headfirst into uncertain waters without a life raft. We can reinforce each other. It makes us stronger." Mark felt her sentiment break through the barrier of doubt he had unconsciously erected. Leah was not just trying to protect him, she was actively investing in their partnership. A rush of appreciation flooded through him. "All right," he said resolutely. "Let's make sure we both commit fully to this. Let's ensure our vision is fortified and supported." "Absolutely," she replied, a spark igniting in her eyes. Together they began mapping out their strategy, a project that would blend both their dreams, education, empowerment, community engagement. As the conversation flowed, Mark felt the weight of anxiety start to lift. They brainstormed ways to bypass obstacles Garrett presented, solidifying their plan with contingencies and outreach strategies. Days transitioned into nights as Mark and Leah worked tirelessly. Each discussion further reinforced their partnership and steered them closer to a common goal that transcended their individual ambitions. They reached out to community leaders, gathered endorsements, and navigated the tricky waters of local sponsorships. The culmination of their efforts was marked by an exhilarating community event showcasing their initiative. A vibrant blend of workshops for families, parents, and kids alike, filling the space with energy, creativity, and support. Children laughed, educators exchanged resources, and community members connected in ways they hadn't before. Yet amidst the joy and celebration, the lingering shadow of Garrett remained, a whisper that never fully dissipated. One evening after the event, as they reviewed feedback at Mark's apartment, that foreboding message resurfaced. "Have you had any further messages from that unknown number?" Leah asked, concern rippling through her voice. "Nothing, I've just kept the phone off for the most part," he admitted, still restricting its power over his mind. "It's a distraction I refuse to let derail us." Yet deep down, he felt the unresolved tension, a constant reminder that success was never guaranteed. "Mark," Leah began, her tone gentle yet firm, "the progress we've made is significant, but it's time to confront Garrett directly, to establish a boundary that he can't cross." "Do you think I'm ready?" Mark questioned. "I know you are," she reassured him, her gaze unwavering. "It won't be easy, but you've already studied his playbook. Use what you've learned, and don't forget we're a team together. I'll support you." That recognition struck deep into Mark's core. Leah's unwavering belief in him lit a fire that had flickered dimly before. "Then let's do it," he agreed fiercely, resolve replacing residual anxiety. "I'll confront Garrett head-on. It's time to end this uncertainty and lay the groundwork for our future, together." The decision solidified his growth. The fear that once overwhelmed him now transformed into courage. He would no longer let the shadows of past insecurities dictate his future. As they prepared for the meeting, Mark felt a newfound sense of confidence wash over him. He was not the same man who had once measured himself against the affluent metrics of financial success. He was ready to embrace this partnership, not just with Leah but within himself, bringing forth a version that embodied sincerity, accountability, and purpose. The hour arrived, a meeting set with Garrett. Mark and Leah stood united, ready to present their roadmap, fortified by their collaborative drive. Every step carried a weight of newfound conviction. They entered the cafe where the meeting would unfold. No longer did doubt consume him, nor did anxiety cling to his heels. This was an arena he would redefine. Today he would prove that his journey was not just about the pursuit of power. It was about building an equitable future. As he faced Garrett, a smile danced on the edge of Mark's lips, no longer burdened by the fear of hidden malice. This time, he was ready to take charge. With Leah ideating beside him, and the community's strength at his back, Mark Thompson was set to conquer not only Garrett's cynicism, but the self-perceptions that had once held him back. He stood firm, grounded in this renewal as he initiated the conversation. "Garrett," Mark began, "let's discuss the future." The air shimmered with possibility, and for the first time he felt unshakably anchored to the life he was building, not just for himself, but for all who shared in the journey ahead. Mark smiled in tranquility, ready to seize his well-deserved achievements and to fortify his partnership with Leah, knowing that together they were more powerful than their pasts, and even Garrett's looming presence. And if anyone dared to challenge their unity again, Mark was ready to show that they could meet any storm head-on, fierce, inspired, and irreversibly transformed. This was the lasting legacy he would write, a legacy worth sharing, and the future he'd always envisioned, his own American aspiration realized. As the meeting unfolded, alliances were tested, but it became clear. The path ahead was brighter than darkness. Step into your own journey. Embrace, redefine, and support the path others have taken by subscribing now to the channel. Leave a like for the algorithm and share this story with those who need to realize their potential and challenge themselves. You need to subscribe now to follow these transformative journeys. Let's show the world how stories of resilience and overcoming shape our lives. Don't hesitate to leave a comment about your insights and reactions. This is the moment to show your support, Help uplift our community by sharing this video with at least 5 friends. Don't wait even one more second.